All right. This is the Broadway Boys podcast through the Hockey Podcast Network. And Andy and I have the privilege of getting to sit down and talk to the head of the morning skate, Ked. Jimmy, I don't know what you go by these days now. Morning skate Ked, pretty much. Is that it?
Yeah, I just turned 30, so maybe James. We might
Or
have a James duo off right now, but yeah, thanks for having me, boys.
yeah, we'll go by Mr. Ked. That
That's
like
fine.
sounds a little bit more formal.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, dude, we haven't spoken to you in such a long time. Obviously, so much has happened, not only with, the morning skate, but with the New York Rangers. We got a lot to cover today. Andy, first, I need to say, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good. Little helter skelter getting everything set up, but I have this Voodoo Ranger IPA. I'm sure State of Hoppy will be happy to hear that. And yeah, I'm ready for a fun one. It was a overcast, and after the string of nice days we've had, there's a little bit of rain here. So yeah, but looking forward to having a good time on this one.
Yeah, no, I'm absolutely pumped. A long time coming, but Ked, let's first let's first talk about your two recent guests on the Morning Skate podcast. You had the legendary Linda Cohn, absolute beauty, childhood ESPN Sports Center, diehard Ranger fan. She's awesome. Love that interview. And then you got to sit down with an NHL Hall of Famer, one of probably one of the biggest iconic players to ever play the game of hockey in Theo Fleury. What was that like? And can you
Little
talk a
ball of
little bit
hate.
about that? Yep.
Yeah, I mean it's been pretty cool, dude. The last couple weeks have been sick. Linda Cohn was, I mean, just like a pro's pro. And talking to her, you kind of remember, like, I don't know about you guys, like I always liked hockey, but I like baseball a lot too. And like growing up, you turn on Sports Center and you would always hear her voice. So like when I was like interviewing her, it was kind of weird because it was like, holy shit, like this is her voice. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
and she was so nice and open and just that had been in the works for a while, and I was really happy to have her on. She's like, as the season goes on, if there's a season, like bring me back on, I'll talk Rangers. Like she was jacked up about it. And then Theo Fleury, like if you're new to hockey, like people hate Brad Marchand because like they call him a rat and all that stuff. You wouldn't have been able to watch a hockey game that Theo Fleury played in. He played with so much heart and intensity and like fire in his game, and he was smaller, and like I'm not the biggest dude, so like growing up, looked up to him, and like his journey is incredible. And if you get a chance, check out the podcast. He's super open about the things that he struggled with and the things that he overcome. That was like whenever we have people on, I ask them what their oh shit moment was, and like Theo Fleury's definitely and Linda Cohn's definitely like one of mine. Like it's kind of cool that I get to talk to these guys.
Yeah, well, especially Linda Cohn because she was like the voice of my childhood, and it's so cool that you got to sit down and talk to her. Like, I'd never realized like how much she was like into hockey until like your interview, and like I knew she was a Rangers fan, but like her story growing up, playing in college, and just like her whole story of how she got where she was, and to be at the pillar of sports talk I guess being with ESPN, I mean, there was nothing bigger than that. And she was our childhood talking
Yeah.
sports, especially when ESPN covered hockey. So that was awesome.
No, for sure. And like I knew she liked the Rangers, and I knew she had played hockey because Portnoy from Barstool went and tried out for like the Florida Panthers, like backup goalie, remember? And I remember there being like a little clip that Linda Cohn was on the ice in goalie gear. I'm like, oh, that's kind of cool, but like I guess I never put two and two together. So yeah, it was pretty amazing experience.
Yeah. And the Theo Fleury interview, obviously, talking to him had to be surreal. Uh, you know, I have to ask you, like, before and after the show, did you like talk to him at all? Like, how was he prior to? Because I'd be like so nervous, like preparing for that episode. Like, hi, can you just gotta click this link? Like, if one thing went wrong, I'd be absolutely petrified.
Yeah, so I actually went through his agent Dawn. I reached out a couple years ago and it didn't work out, and then I reached out again, and this time it did. And it's funny that you said that because I just got like a new Mac, and of course, like maybe 2 weeks into having it, I spilled a beer on it. So, but it came back to life, and it was working fine. And I opened it up, and like I'm ready to go with Theo. And then it's like we can't hear your audio, and the video doesn't work. I'm like, oh my god, I didn't test that out. So I had to close that one out, go grab the other computer really quick, get back on. I was like a minute late, but like, I mean, what a guy. He was. But I was definitely shitting my pants there for a second. I'm like, I just ruined everything with Theo Fleury. Are you kidding me?
His book,
Uh,
was it Playing with Fire, is amazing. If you guys have
Yeah,
never read it, it's incredible.
yeah.
Just check it,
He
James. If you haven't
definitely
read
went.
it, you absolutely have to read it.
Yeah, he definitely went through some things, but he came out on top. And like he talks about how like he loved being a hockey player and all this stuff, but after it was over, like he's really found his purpose. And I think that's just like an admirable thing. Like this guy, he literally went to hell and back, and he's doing great. And yeah, he actually started a country music career a little bit. He's got an album on Spotify if you guys want to check it out, which I thought was pretty awesome. His karaoke song is Country Roads. I mean, just salt of the earth guy. So it was pretty cool.
Yeah, that's awesome. I know Andy, obviously Theo Fleury was like a childhood Ranger. Like I remember the day that it was announced that he was coming to New York. I remember running around the house being like, "We got Theo Fleury. We got Theo Fleury." And obviously just an iconic hockey player, just from his style to his grittiness to his ability to put up points was just unbelievable. So, yeah, dude, awesome interviews. I listened to them both. They were both excellent. Again, if you haven't heard it, go check out the Morning Skate podcast and listen to those because they're definitely worth it. But let's get down to brass tacks here. We wanted to cover all the New York Rangers. I know you and I don't always see eye to eye on things with the New York Rangers, but we have a lot to cover. First, I don't even think you were here when everything happened with the bubble and the Rangers, went to Toronto and got knocked out in 3 games. So let's start from the beginning and your thoughts going into the bubble, your thoughts 3 days later, it seemed like after the bubble. How'd that go for you?
I mean, I was on a bachelor party, and so I had a few casuals pretty much every day. So like I was on top of the earth. I'm like, Rangers are fine. They started Hank, which I thought was a little bit weird, just because I mean, if we're looking at stats right now, Hank didn't have a great year. He's 10, 12 and 3. Georgiev was 17, 14 and 2. And the one thing about Lundqvist, I think, his entire career is for some reason the Rangers always kind of played like dog shit in front of him. But the moment we put a backup goalie in net, it was like, we remembered how to play defense. And it was that from the moment he got here to the moment he left. And I thought that was weird. I didn't think he played that bad. And then by the time it was game 3 with Shesterkin, you can only do so much. Jesper Fast getting blown up by Brady Skjei like the first shift of the series was. I'm like, oh, Brady Skjei learned how to hit in like a week with Carolina.
Where was that for 4 years? 4 seasons.
Right, and that was
Jesus
a huge
Christ.
hit. But like, you're not going to win a playoff series when Brendan Smith's like one of your most noticeable players. And like, I'm not saying Smitty lit it up, but he was recognizable every shift. It was nice seeing Kaapo come back. But like, I don't know. It just seemed like the Rangers weren't mentally prepared, I guess. Like the Carolina had X's and O's down to a science, and the Rangers were kind of just out there for an open skate, which was a little disappointing, but especially to the Hurricanes. But it ended up working out for us. So
Yeah, well, I mean, we can definitely get into that. When we got knocked out, it still wasn't a reality that, like, I knew we had a chance to get that first overall pick, but it really wasn't reality. And Andy, you can attest to this. How many conversations did we have, like, maybe we should do this to bring us like good luck. Maybe I should not watch the draft, lottery or the draft or the draft lottery because we seem to have, better luck with me not watching at all since we got Kakko and then now obviously we got Lafreniere.
Yeah, it's funny because when you weren't watching during the first draft lottery and I called you, I think I don't know if you had a date night with the missus, but I called you and I'm like, you're not going to believe it. Like it went to one of the play-in teams. So I'm like, we have a chance, but we were just kind of like, there's no fucking way. It's not happening. And then you were doing something else. You were like, remember you saying exactly what you just said. Like, I'm not even going to watch it. Like, I don't know. And I got to break that news to you, which was amazing, but I'm sure your phone was already blowing up. But, yeah, I dove off of my couch and smacked my chin on the floor, like like a dog, like, because I couldn't believe it that I saw the Rangers logo pop up on that ping pong ball. But man, it's still thinking about it. It's a little surreal, especially after it's like I've accepted that Lafreniere is here, but now just thinking about it all over again, it's still kind of crazy to think about.
Yeah, Andy broke the news to me that we got the first overall pick. Jimmy, how did you learn?
I was in my living room eating taco salad, and the ping pong ball came up and I saw red and blue and I immediately, dude, it went everywhere. Like it was an absolute yard sale. And I'm screaming and my mom was with me at the time. She's like, what is going on? And I'm like, we just got the first overall pick. I'm jumping up and down like a kid. It was like Kaapo 2.0, except for a little bit, just an absolute mess everywhere. So what a moment. What a moment. I still can't believe it.
Yeah, I mean, I guess like you probably don't appreciate that moment unless you're like a diehard Rangers fan and like followed the team basically through us our whole childhood. You just felt like it was us trying to buy a Stanley Cup and it just never worked. Whoever we brought in was just a shell of himself. And then finally, like here we are in this like new era where we're rebuilding and we got the second overall pick last year. We're like, oh my God, we got Kakko. And then like lightning strikes twice, and here we are drafting Lafreniere. Like, I mean, watching this kid and his highlights, it's just so surreal that like now he's a part of the New York Rangers. Like, how pumped are you going into like this next season?
It's man, it's pretty surreal. When we drafted first overall, I was in the middle of a playoff co-ed softball game because I'm a bit of an athlete, and we were up like 3 runs, and I brought my phone out to shortstop and like I'm checking it and they score a run and my buddy's like, dude, you need to put that away. I'm like, well, the Rangers are on the clock and it's taking them 5 minutes to pick Lafreniere. Like, what is going on? Did you guys get any sense of that? Because it literally took them the entire time to make that pick when it should have been like a second where it's like, yeah, we took this guy. I'm like, you've got to be kidding me right now.
Yeah, well, I know, Andy, I mean, how many times did we talk about the possibility of them trading the pick or drafting like a Byfield? I mean, we went back and forth a few times, but we kind of knew at the end of the day it had to be Lafreniere. Did we lose Andy?
We might have lost Andy. I don't see him, so I think it's just kind of. Oh, he's back.
He's back in. Andy, did we lose you for a second?
Sorry, yeah, but I'm back. My internet is picked tonight of all nights to be wonky, but I'm back. So
he's back.
So what were you saying, James?
No, I was just saying,
it's
you kind of, you and I spoke a ton about just the possibility of the Rangers trading the pick and then maybe drafting Byfield because they need centers. And, obviously we spent, hours talking about that situation, that scenario. And then, Jimmy was saying how they took forever to make that first overall pick. Like, I mean, obviously Jimmy was like, what the fuck is going on? Was there a little question mark in your head when it took the Rangers that long to draft them?
No, I don't think so. I just think because they had already made comments openly, kind of wink, like John Davidson, like we're most likely going to take him without outright saying it, and also obviously by virtue of the way the draft was run this year, everything took forever. I subjected myself to watching the second day and all rounds 2 through 7, and it was an absolute nightmare. It took all day, but. Yeah, no, I wasn't worried. I just, I think as I love Byfield, I think he's going to be a hell of a player. But there was still no way you could pass on a Lafreniere. Like not once was there any cause for concern throughout his entire career in the queue at all. I mean, every time there was something placed in front of him, he just rose to the occasion. He was absolutely dominant World Juniors, and he's just the closest thing you'll get to a sure thing. Especially considering he's a later birthday. Or excuse me, an earlier birthday. That by the time he steps on the ice as a Rangers, he's going to be close to 19 years old, and is just refreshed and has been working out, I'm sure, every day since March. So it's just too good to pass up. So I didn't think they'd ever trade the pick. Even though we heard like, oh, maybe Ottawa's going to offer Tkachuk and 3 and 5 and all this stuff, but. Yeah, I don't think it ever for the Rangers. I don't think they were ever going to. I think Gorton even said he's like anytime an offer was made, they were wearing a mask and it wasn't it wasn't PPE. It was like
Yeah, I hear it. So Jimmy, I think the first area in which we probably disagreed was the second pick in the first round. You love this kid. I'm not sold on the pick just yet. I thought I think Lapierre was still on the board. I wanted to take a center. We obviously didn't. We took a gritty, hard-nosed, typical, morning skate player. What are your thoughts on Schneider?
I was pumped when it happened. I'm a big, if you put up a cool highlight package in front of me, I get behind it. If I was a Columbus Blue Jackets fan, I would have lost my shit. But I don't know, man. I was pumped about it. He plays with an edge, but they didn't say he was like a goon or anything like that. And like, I think the Rangers want to be tougher to play against, and that's the type of player you want. And since the draft has happened, the Rangers just keep hammering this video of like them being in the room making this trade, and like every time the clip gets longer and longer and longer, and like you see they wanted him well before Jersey was up to pick. Like they kept bringing up his name over and over and over again, and then when they finally made the deal, JD like was going nuts.
Yeah.
He's like telling people to shut the fuck up. He's like, shh,
Yeah.
we have a deal going on right now. And then they talked about I think it was Gordy Clark. One of the scouts said, if you told me that we were leaving the first round with Alexis Lafreniere and a top 4 defenseman, I don't think I could have been happier. So they have this kid pegged in the top 4. Whether he's going to be a first pairing defenseman, whatever, but like the Rangers have desperately missed a defenseman to put out there in the minutes where they need to defend. And I mean, you have DeAngelo, Fox, Trouba, I guess, is a little bit offensive, but like you have these guys that, you know, they can put pucks in the net, but when it comes to defending, like they might not have that edge. And like Lindgren has an edge, but how big is he? He's not like the biggest dude. I don't think he's really that intimidating. But I think that I loved it, and I know I understand why you wanted a center, but sometimes like maybe they just didn't think the centers that are available were going to amount to anything. And if you have that. If you have a guy you're going to take a risk on that might be an NHL player someday, or a guy that you know or think that you know is pegged for a top 4 defenseman, like I think you got to pick the defenseman.
Yeah, I hear you, Andy. Give the breakdown of how you feel about Schneider. I just feel like I know you said in the beginning that he kind of the pick grows on you every single day.
Oh yeah.
So being this far removed now from the draft, how do you feel about that pick?
Well, I think one thing is that in that video, the person who was saying like if you walk out with the best player in the draft in a top 4 defenseman, that's Chris Morehouse. He's their recent head scout for the Western Hockey League. I know for a fact from doing a little research and digging that there was quite a few teams that had Schneider in their top 10, and a large number of them that had them in top 15. We know the Devils wanted him, so the fact that the Rangers were able to swoop in and take him away from them, and then the Devils have to decide to draft Shakir Mukhamadullin, who I think has some issues in how he processes the game. So there's a chance that pick might not pan out. Makes it all the more sweeter for me, but. Yeah, listen, Schneider, he definitely grows on you. He's they keep saying old school, but don't let that fool you. He's still very mobile for his size. He likes to hit, but they're not like these big open ice, admiring his hit where the puck squeaks out and then you just one of the attacker's teammates picks it up and goes to down to the other end.
The classic.
He's very good at. Exactly. He times it, but then his head's always the puck. He always one scout said, I don't think this kid knows what color the puck is, because if you watch him, his head's always up. He scans early. He's poised. He's calm under pressure. And offensively, he's a decent. I don't think he has what it takes to be. He could be a Brent Seabrook type. I think he could be a guy that rides shotgun with a supremely mobile and talented defenseman, which this team seems to, whether that's Tony eventually or hell, even if that's K. Andre, if you have a guy who's going to roam and be a bit more all over the ice, he's the perfect guy to pair with him because his game is meat and potatoes. And if you listen to him talk, he's very mature for his age. He's got the Saskatchewan accent. He's just like he sounds like a prairie boy. And it just the more I think about the pick, just like Jimmy said, it's like from all those centers that may have been available, they all still had question marks. Like I don't know if Ridley Gregg or Hendrix Lapierre or Brendan Brisson or who was still Maverick Bourque was still available. All those guys have pretty big question marks. And I mean, what you kind of see is what you get with Schneider. He'll play in the NHL, whether, maybe he only becomes a third pairing defenseman, but I don't think there's a chance he doesn't play or see NHL ice. He definitely thinks the game well enough. He's poised, he's strong enough, he's developed enough. He can make a good first pass. And yeah, I mean, if that's your first day, you get the best player and a sure thing, and who's most likely your middle pairing, penalty killing middle pairing defenseman. I mean, you're ecstatic,
Can you compare him to Jeff Bougaboom? Because Jeff Bougaboom's obviously my guy. I wore 23 my entire life to him. He was kind of like riding next to Leach all those years. Just an iconic player, obviously part of the '94 Stanley Cup team.
Yeah, I mean, he's definitely has that, obviously updated a little bit because he's so
Yeah, of course.
mobile. But, at the same time, though, I think as close as to someone who is more interested in just making that first pass and not maybe, maybe he's limited in terms of his creativity and his offensive, how he thinks the game offensively. But he does join the rush quite a bit. He's, you could say he's definitely a modern Jeff Bukaboom in a way. Listen, the hits alone. He's the most physical player, maybe outside of a Ridley Gregg or an Ozzie Wiesblatt in the draft this year. So, he's the Rangers got him. So you have to be happy about that.
No, I'm pumped. Obviously, Ked is pumped. There's still going to be a question mark because if one of these kids end up being a 1C or a 2C, I'm going to be pretty upset. If they enter the league, ready to rock. All right. So obviously the biggest thing recently was go ahead.
I just also wanted to bring up our, I think, third round pick, Will Cooley. Love that pick. They said he models his game after Tom Wilson. And the reason why I love that pick so much is your boy Lias went the other way. So shout out to Will Cooley. I have his back from the moment he's on the Rangers, and we'll see what happens.
All right. Andy, you're gonna have to bury the hatchet here. I was always pro Lias. He's anti Lias.
Beyond.
Yeah.
But we made a bet. Maybe we'll buy each other a large pizza one night. I said that Lias would play in the NHL again. Do you see that happening, Andy?
I bet he plays in the NHL again.
I would imagine he does.
That was the bet that we made.
Well, I bet he plays in the NHL, but I think that you're kind of thinking he's going to be like some sort of relevant player. He's going to be like a guy who maybe plays like 6 games a year and I hate him.
I don't think he's going to be playing more than 6 games a year.
I think it's clear at this point that Lias is not, I think the Rangers saw him as a Bo Horvat type, a guy who maybe he's is like a tweener, second line, defensively responsible center who thinks the game well enough to. I think at this point we can see that his skating and his foot speed probably limits him at the NHL level, because as smart as he is, it's still not enough. There's some players like Derek Stepan was slow as molasses, but at the same time he thought the game well enough that he could show up to spots before where the puck was going to be, even though he skated like he was skating in mud. And I just don't think Lias is quite that smart, unfortunately, for his skating ability and his lack of explosivity. I think he can carve out a role as a bottom 6 center, who can kill penalties and just can contribute in that way. But I think he still has things to work on. I don't. Watching him in the SHL, as good as he's been, I don't know if I necessarily see he's still made the strides in his skating that he needs to. And because I wanted to, at this point, I just kind of, you want it to work out for him. But I don't know. As the more time goes on, the less likely it seems to me.
Well, I got a couple things here. Number one, thank God we drafted Hedl in that first round to at least make it worth it. I mean, Hedl. Obviously, there's still question marks around him, but thank God we got him at least in that first round. Number 2, I believe he's still like 17 overall in NHL points from that draft class. So he's not like a total bust. It kind of seems like that year just might have been pretty weak overall in terms of points. Does anybody agree, disagree?
I definitely agree.
Ken is like, no.
He's a career 4th liner or a really good player on an AHL team, but if you send him to the AHL, he'll just go back to Sweden. You talked about his skating. I think he needs to work on his attitude.
Well, I mean, it's pretty difficult to come into the league and then, your wingers are, who do you even have? He had,
there you go.
Well, I don't even remember his name, but that guy, oh God, what the hell was his name? Oh, Haley. Haley was like his best line mate. Of course that guy's going to fail. And then
I think Tanner Glass put up more points with Michael Haley than Lias Andersson did.
Yeah. Well, James, to your point, if you look at that 2017 draft, thank God the Rangers drafted Hedl because, of that first round of the 31 kids who were taken, I think only 10 of them have even sniffed the NHL. Obviously, you have Nolan Patrick has had concussion problems from day one. Heiskanen is amazing, obviously. McCarr.
Dude, unbelievable player.
Yeah, and Pettersson. But after that, Middlestat, Lias Andersson, Cody Glass saw a little bit of time with Vegas. He seems like he's fine. But yeah, you have Netchas in Carolina, and then you have Hedel, and really I'm looking at all these other names, and Liljegren and Robert Thomas, but the rest of them have yet to either make an impact or they're playing in the A and they're trying to get there. So yeah, I think it's just a weaker year overall, and thank God the Rangers took Hedel and saw his production against grown men as a teenager in the Czech Extra League, because if it was, there'd be pitchforks out if that draft they just came away with Lias Andersson and that was it.
Also, thank God for Will Cooley.
Yeah. I mean, that interview with him, he's talking to Star Wars about with the NHL panel people, and then he starts talking about immaculate conception of Darth Vader, and it's pretty wild. And he seems like a chill guy. I would love to have him on the podcast, but we'll see. We'll try to make that happen.
Ked, could you, if you had the opportunity right now, you could interview Lias Andersson, and you get to live stream playing Fortnite with them, would you do it?
Yeah.
For the morning.
Yeah, as long as he was honest, because I want to know what happened.
All right.
Because nobody, dude, they haven't said anything, and he keeps coming out and saying these stuff, and the Rangers are well, that didn't happen. So something had to have happened.
Yeah, I also do, and tell me if I'm wrong here, but I feel like the modern day European players, like the 18-year-olds that get drafted and come here, especially coming to a city like New York, it's got to be way harder than it was back in the day. Because at least back in the day, you you hopped on a bus and you were going to rinks where you didn't know where you were. But nowadays, kids have their social media, they have all contacts with their friends back at home to see them having fun, and you could be stuck in this big city, and mentally that could be kind of odd and kind of unstable, for these 18-year-olds.
No, for sure. And let me just say something. If this had to do with mental health and all that stuff, and that's what the reason is, I rescind everything I say, because I think when it comes down to it, the first thing you need to worry about is mental health 100%. Having said that, if he's just saying that and that's not actually the case, or anything along those lines, I'm right back to hating him. That's just how it is. I want to know what happened. And again, it's none of my business, and they don't give a shit about what I think. But it was weird. And the worst part is I was so high on him, dude. I love the fact that he threw a silver medal in the stands. I'm that's a badass move. This guy likes to win. Now I just think he was throwing a temper tantrum. So I don't know. It is what it is. He's not on the Rangers anymore. He's going to the Kings, which is an older team. Maybe he gets a shot. But like Andy said, the Rangers had all these traits that they loved about him, but they forgot you need to be able to skate to play hockey. And I just don't think he can skate.
All right. Well, skating is a big part of hockey. So let's get into the New York Rangers offseason, I guess, if that's what you really want to call it right now. The free agency did not go pretty much how I thought it was going to go. I thought for sure we kind of bring in someone with a bigger name, a bigger presence for that second center role. But we kind of just, as Andy puts it, we punted to live another day. And, first off, I want to say, Staal getting traded, was that not the best move the Rangers have made in the past 10 years?
I couldn't believe it. I was getting text messages. My buddy who's a Red Wings fan texted me. He's you've got to be kidding me. You've got to be kidding me. I'm what's going on? I think it's pretty well known I'm not the biggest Marc Staal supporter. Never have been, never will be. I loved it. I wish they did this 3 years ago. I don't know what else to tell you. I think that was a huge move. Andy, I think he nailed it on punting it, and I think that was the smart move, man. If you look out there and who the second line centers were out there, there wasn't really a guy who really moved my needle that much. And I get that we're rebuilding or whatever, and people want to win the cup now, but sometimes you got to do that. And I thought it was going to be more of a trade than it was going to be a free agency kind of thing. I was wondering if anybody was going to get moved. I was worried DeAngelo was going to get moved. But what the Rangers did is they held packed, and I thought they made great contracts with the people that they have. They re-signed Strome 2 years, DeAngelo 2 years, Lemieux 2 years. And this gives them the option of Let's see how next year goes. If the kids grow and they are what they are, maybe we keep them. But you have that where you can deal them at the deadline. And a lot of people are saying, like, oh, why do we keep drafting a defenseman? We're going to have all these defensemen. Like, yeah, we are going to have all these defensemen, but, like, you're allowed to make trades in the NHL. And people are going to love a younger defenseman. So, like, having too many defensemen is a good issue to have. And, again, just like punting, I don't think there's anything on there that we're going to turn us into a Stanley Cup contender this year. And instead of forcing it, which what the Rangers always do, right? They always bring in, like, these fucking big names that are well past their prime, and they get here and they don't do anything. They made the smart move. This was not we're going to win next year. This is, well, the next 5 years, where are we going to be? And I love that. Again, as a fan, it kind of sucks because you want that instant gratification of being like, oh, we got this guy. We made the playoffs last year, regardless of how many teams were involved. I read Lundqvist stats earlier, but like Shesterkin, he went 10-2 in 12 games. That guy's going to get a majority of the games. How many games is he going to win? Like, I think we're a playoff team. And I just don't think that there was a guy out there that was going to push us into a point where, you know what, we're contending for a cup. And then if it all hits the fan and we don't play well next year, move DeAngelo, move Strome, move these guys and bring in other people. I thought what they did was genius.
Well, that's what I really wanted to touch on with you, because I know you love DeAngelo. Obviously, right defense, putting up a ton of points, very rare in the NHL. He's a huge asset. Were you part of the Tony DeAngelo camp that wanted him signed long term, or were you okay with doing another bridge? Because now they're building the bridge right next to the George Washington, the Tony DeAngelo bridge, because that's how many bridge contracts this kid has had.
I might be wrong, but his next contract, is he still restricted? Did I read somewhere that his next contract he's still restricted?
Yeah, the only one that's not restricted is Strome.
I mean, again, I think this is kind of another no-brainer. Tony, you did it 1 year. Show us you can keep doing this. And if not, we'll deal you. Like, it makes sense. And the amount of Rangers fans that hate Tony DeAngelo, it's insane. Like, I think he was tied 5th in the entire league in points as a defenseman on the New York Rangers, which wasn't like an overly offensive team. And I think a lot of it has to do with his political views. And if he just shut up, people would probably love him. But he's very one way, and then immediately people want to get rid of him because he's that way. Well, you're an organization that's trying to win games, and he was 5th in the entire league, 4th or 5th, I think 5th in the entire league as a defenseman.
And even strength points as a defenseman.
Like
in total points, actually, as a defenseman, yeah.
How do you say that you want to move a guy that's 5th in the entire league? When's the last time we had a defenseman that was 5th in the entire league in points? Leach has to be.
I mean, I wanted to move him only because I saw what an asset he was, and if you look at right now our prospect pool for a defenseman, I just don't know if Tony fits the puzzle a couple of years from now with these kids moving up. And
totally get that.
And this is credit to Tony too. His performance over the last couple of years with the New York Rangers is worthy of term and money, which I don't really want the Rangers to do to anybody until we figure out what we have with all these kids.
And that's the funniest part, and it drives me nuts. Like, I like Lundqvist. Lundqvist? Is that what we say? Is that what we say his name? As a prospect,
same as, yeah.
You look at the points he's put up in the Swedish league. I totally get it. These fans are like,